Welcome to the Imperfect Brand series. This is a series dedicated to exploring the core message of embracing imperfections and helping individuals and businesses overcome self-doubt. Why? Because we want to build strong, authentic brands. We don't want brands that look like others, right? And so it's a really big thing to not have to fake it till you make it and actually be real about the experiences we're having behind the scenes. Today we have with us Stefan, and before we jump into that, I have not introduced myself. I'm Val Brown. I am a brand consultant. You can call me a strategist, whatever you like, but all I do is I love making beautiful brands. And so let's wind back. Today we have Stefan with us. He is a brand first, content second T-shaped marketer. Now he's going to tell us today what a T-shaped marketer is, because I think I can identify with one, but I'm not really sure that I'm there yet. And so he strives to build long-term sustainable growth for organizations and people and companies, and basically add value through meaningful customer experiences. But before I give too much away, I'm going to let you, Stefan, continue with the introduction and just give us a little bit more about yourself and who you are.
Cool. Thanks, Val. So I'm Stefan Maritz. As the intro said, I kind of refer to myself as a brand first, content second marketer. Quick recap of how we got here. Thought I wanted to be a lawyer my entire life until I started studying that. And then I realized I don't want to be a lawyer. Someone told me do marketing. Back then when I was like 20 years old, I didn't really know. But one way or another, fell in love with it. Absolutely into the craze, especially the side of the consumer psychology around it. Marketing is one thing, up ads, writing nice copy. It's one side of it. But what really kind of struck me was the psychology side, the shaping of perceptions, which everything is pretty much evolving around for me. So studied marketing, fell in love with the branding side, naturally on the psychology, went over to do my postgraduate degree in strategic brand management. And then from there, career just kind of unfolded. I was happy enough to secure my first internship back in the day in Cape Town at Ogilvy. Spent a few years at the agencies, big ones, small ones, worked on some of the most glamorous brands in the world. I see that as luck pretty much. So I got a good start, everything from Sky Vodka, BMW, Campari, tea, British American Tobacco, Jose Cuervo, something of everything across the board, different industries. At some point I realized I actually don't like being on the advertising side of the table, or more the consultation side. I wanted to be the one calling the shots, because back then I had the idea in my mind that a lot of these marketing managers don't know what's going on. They come to us for ideas, we give them ideas, and they never execute them, which was annoying me. Then I kind of bridged the gap over to the other side. And since then, I've now been running marketing teams for mostly scale-ups. It was pretty much just at that point where branding becomes really important. If you build a solid business, and then you need to answer the question, how does this grow? And then that's usually when marketing comes in. Oftentimes it's left until last. I wish I could tell like founders and business leaders to start with marketing earlier, but hey, that's how the world works. So that's pretty much what I do. And since I come from a branding background, everything I do in marketing revolves around shaping the brand. Yes, there's performance marketing, it's obviously important, but every decision I make always goes back to what's the purpose here? What are we trying to build? Who are we building this for? And how do we add value to the world? And then naturally through that, everything else falls in place. Yeah. So that's me in a nutshell.
Oh, awesome. That's a lot to take in, but it's very impressive and even quite inspirational, I think, for a lot of guys who are thinking about transitioning and changing roles at the end of 2024 now. And you can imagine the mindset of so many. It's been a tough year. And there's a lot of people who are saying, what do I do next? Where do I go? And so you talk a lot about the T-shaped marketer. Can you describe for us what that is? Because you have people in marketing roles who maybe don't know how to grow their gift or grow into other spaces, just like you have. What is that?
So in essence, the T-shaped marketing down into a marketer that is specialized in more than one vertical. So if you think about a typical specialist, let's use SEO as example. So SEO specialist, they focus mostly on all things content for SEO, technical SEO. They live and breathe SEO. You go to them if you want to like rank at the top of Google. They understand everything in depth. It's a very specialized role that you call in to overcome certain challenges. Where the T-shaped marketer is a specialist, but has spent enough time in more than one vertical to specialize in about 2 to 3 throughout their career. And then
Mm.
also along with that, have a very strong, broad knowledge across the entire spectrum. So they can see the funnel in its totality, but not necessarily specialize in, say, PPC marketing or SEO. And you might need to get a specialist in to help you, but they do
Yeah.
specialize in more than one vertical. So in my case, I started with branding. Through branding, I realized that content is the vehicle of branding. So I made a
Yeah.
point of specializing in content. And then naturally through my career, I spent a lot of time at like the tech companies. So product marketing became the vehicle of the content. And these three kind of
Mm.
live together. So I'm brand first, but you can't build the brand if you don't understand the content, and you can't do good content marketing if you don't understand product marketing very well. So my three verticals that I specialize in is brand, content, and product marketing. But since I've been in leadership roles, and also my exposure, especially through the agency in the early days of my career, I've been
Yeah.
exposed to everything, and you pick up everything. So I can take part in an SEO conversation. I can do all the basic things of SEO for a website. I can set up campaigns. I can run digital strategies across all the different platforms. I understand where what fits in, and that allows me to do a lot of the leading. I can pull the team together. I see the full funnel. I know what needs to happen where, and I can also come to the party with enough knowledge to test certain things. So for instance, if I don't want to
Mm.
deploy an agency yet, I can test the hypothesis on, say, LinkedIn ads all by myself. I can create
Yeah.
the campaigns, I can set up the audiences, I can run the whole thing to a point where we say, okay, there is a light at the end of this tunnel. Let's go. So basically, in a nutshell, a t-shirt marketer is someone with a strong understanding of the full spectrum, but specialize in 2 to 3 verticals instead of dedicating the entire career to a single vertical. This is different than a generalist. So a generalist would just be someone that, they can do a lot of everything, but they don't really specialize in a certain thing. So
Mm.
specialist in 3 verticals, and then you get the T-shaped, obviously.
Oh, I really love how you've broken that down, because a lot of people would maybe come from a space of being a generalist, but want to specialize, and they feel trapped in a box because now somebody's telling them they need to niche. They have to have one direction to take. And that's not how they're wired strategically to touch many spaces. And so structuring it like that kind of helps people like me know how to package ourselves and present ourselves to the market, and say, maybe start involving me in your leadership decisions, right? Because I can help you know where there's a gap or what you need for your team, because I have experience in that space and I know it'll be useful for your marketing team.
Yeah, so
And so,
just to add to
yeah,
that, if you don't, like, it's becoming more and more important, because what we do see in the market is that companies' marketing budgets are always the first to go. When times are tough,
oh
marketing
yes,
gets cut. We know this. And also, they're always looking for the highest return on investment on a single employee. So, headcount
mm,
versus what you get back. T-shirt marketers are the people that really like thrive, and they're the last ones to leave, because they get to do more than one thing. Like, they can shift attention, and then you can plug in specialists. So if you keep an eye on the market, you'll see that more and more of these descriptions that people are joking about in the industry, hey, you need all of these experiences, and you need to be able to do everything. That's the
yeah,
real situation that we're sitting with. It's definitely not slowing down. So my advice to
yeah,
anyone is, a specialist would always have a place, and an agency would always have a place, because there's always instances where we need to call in additional specialist help. But for your
yeah,
standard kind of startup, scale up, small company that needs bang for buck on marketing, the t-shirt
yeah,
market will always come out at the front of that. And that's why I'm at CXL at the moment, because that's pretty much what we sell, right? It's the marketing training. So to answer your other question, where do people go? I can
yeah.
wholeheartedly sit here and say, go to CXL to study marketing if you're thinking about it, because that is where you can actually acquire all of these. We've got 9 mini degrees that you can study to fill the entire spectrum if you want to.
Oh, that's exciting. So if you are a T-shaped marketer, I think we're on that topic now, so we might as well dig a little deeper. And you are a manager of teams. You have all of these skills, and now you are leading teams because you've acquired the right skill sets. How do you manage those people, those members who also might have diverse skills in a certain space? What would you advise a manager who's now put this T-shaped marketer on his team and he's also managing other people, what would you say is the best way to measure their performance, see how they're doing, see that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing?
Well, at the end of the day, leadership is achieving results through people, right? So if you've got I'd much rather myself, and I can only use myself example here, I'd much rather sit with a team of 3 T-shaped marketers that specialize in different verticals and then
Mm.
almost create like project pods where you put them together to work on certain things, and then I will fill up with specialists where needed. Specialist roles will always be the last ones I actually employ because
Mm-hmm.
they're hard to justify, they're usually expensive, and to get a person in that comes sit in the corner and only looks at one thing, twists one knob as a full-time position,
Yes.
just doesn't make sense for me. So I'd much
Mm.
rather get like supplement myself with other T-shaped marketers that I know I can deploy in 3 different directions. So if we're 3 people and I know I'm strong at branding and content, get
Yeah.
someone who's very strong in digital marketing and SEO and PPC, and then together we can probably do everything we have to. The only problem is going to become with bandwidth, like how much time do we physically have to do the work we need to do. So that's where the problem comes in, is actually time
Mm.
dedicated to stuff, because you can only do so much in a day, and if you're only 2 people or 3 people, you can only
Yeah.
do that much. So it's about creating like functional pods in a sense. So if you've got,
Yeah.
there's no point in having 2 T-shaped marketers with exactly the same specialization, because
Mm.
then you just sit with those skills, where if you've got both of them seeing the full funnel, but they come with 3 or 2 different specializations to the table, it's like having 5 specialists and 2 generalists, if that makes sense.
Yes, it
So
does.
when I start building teams, I always go after people that can do more than one thing. That's what I'm looking for on CVs, for instance, is can you do, if you're a designer, cool, but do you also understand social media very well? Because if you're going to be
Yeah.
designing for social media, and it's great if you're a great designer, but if I ask you to design ads or social media posts and you don't have a very strong concept of what's going on there, you're
Mm.
lagging. So I'd rather go for
Yes.
someone that can also put together a very basic content plan. I don't need them to do the social media, but that understanding puts them ahead of someone that can just create pretty pictures, for instance.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I've had experience where you have to micromanage the design team because they don't have social media knowledge. So they don't actually understand the full picture, right? And that takes a lot of time out of you doing maybe more strategic things that need to be done. So I really love the example that you gave there. Another thing I want to ask you, Stefan, is on the branding side now. There's a lot of confusion about branding versus marketing. I think you'd agree. Even up to today, with so much information given on LinkedIn, it's still a big thing. I know that another topic you love to tackle in the comments is a rebrand versus refresh, but we'll do that another time. I really do enjoy the conversation. I pop my head in and I see those comments. I'm like, okay, I really need to study this if I'm going to tackle Stefan on on rebrands and refreshes. But back to the question, what are the challenges and opportunities you see in bridging that gap between branding and marketing? Do I have to hire a brand specialist when I have a marketer in my team, and why?
Okay, so there's quite a few there. Number one, there's a very big confusion. The confusion is widespread as well. It's everything from the general public to very experienced business leaders to oftentimes the comments I usually go after specifically on LinkedIn, these agency founders that kind of pride themselves in we're a branding agency.
Yeah.
Most of the times they don't understand the strategy. There's a general misconception that a brand is, in its very basic form, a logo and a name. It's this thing I see. That's where the confusion starts, which is understandable for people who's not in the industry. Number one. Problem number two is that oftentimes branding is perceived as something that the marketing team should do. So
Mm-hmm.
SEO or like social media or like copywriting, for instance. It's this task that is just there. That is the biggest problem in organizations, in my opinion, because that is so far from the truth that it actually hurts not just me, but the company in so
Yeah.
many ways. Because a brand is, at the end of the day, 3 pillars, right? There's awareness, there's perception, and there's experience. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, marketing is the team that owns it as a vehicle. They are the primary custodians of it, or as a department, it does fit with branding because it is still part of the marketing methodology. But the brand is far reaching. It's not about what the design looks like. It's not about what we put on social media. It's not about what we put on the website. The moment someone deals with the sales agent or a customer success employee, the experience shapes the brand much stronger than any content that you could put out into the world, for instance. So if you
Yes.
think about a restaurant, very basic example, a friend tells you to go to a place, very nice Italian restaurant. If you like pizza, go, yeah, it's amazing, cool. You've got a perception of this brand because your friend said so. You go to the restaurant, very nice, aesthetics is cool, you love it, you see the menu, the food looks great, awesome.
Mm.
The waiter comes, the waiter is terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. He's having a bad day. He's rude. He gets the order wrong. He takes super long to bring the drinks. Nothing is going according to plan. Finally, you do get the food. The food's great, but the experience was pretty nah. At the end of the day, that whole experience that you have with the brand leaves the perception in a much different manner than what your friend explained to you or what you might have seen on social media. And that is the
Yeah.
brand. And if you apply this to a big organization of any sort in any like industry or market, the brand is shaped by everyone and everything in the organization. Every conversation, every touch point is branding. And to make the mistake to think that only marketing needs to do branding as a task or an operation, that is a big mistake that a lot of companies make. And
Yeah.
then if you go a little bit deeper, there's oftentimes not really a brand strategy in place. So this is a brand consultant on the side myself. This is always where I find myself. Like I've got this big questionnaire that I want founders to explain. And when you start asking them about their vision, their mission, their purpose, their values,
Yeah.
their culture, you get weird things that come out. It's like we want to be the number one, like in this, or we just want to give our customers great like service. That's not
Service.
purpose. Like, so then you start realizing how little people know about this. So what I always do is when I do come into a company, I start with the brand. That's the first questions I ask. I'm not making content before this brand is in place, before I know what the vision is, before I know what the purpose is, before I understand what the value is that this company is trying to put out into the world and to who they want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Branding does fit with marketing. To answer your last question, you don't need a branding specialist if you've got someone in the company that understands that brand is not something that marketing does, which usually should be either your CMO or your CEO is actually supposed to lead this up.
Oh, I love that. I often like to use the example of people see your external being like your external representation of your company is beautiful, it's flawless. Then the minute they walk through your door and they taste, you've drawn them in with all these beautiful visuals, but they walk in and the receptionist is moody and the staff is moody. You have not delivered on your promise. And that is a thing I love to highlight, to say, you need to look at your brand reputation, because it causes a lot of reputational damage to not do what you have promised externally if it's not happening internally, which is why I'm so passionate about culture. If people are not sold on what you are building, then how do I expect my customer out there to also be sold if my internal is like, no, I'm actually not a fan, I'm just here to do a job? And it's hard work, and it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. And I think when people hire a brand consultant, they think I'm going to do magic. We have to tackle the mess first, right? We have to look at what is limping, where are the gaps, and then deal with that and give it time. So I really love your description. Go ahead.
Yeah, so on that point, you raise culture, which is probably the most confusing one of the bunch, because people, when you mention company culture, people are like, oh, ping pong table or our core
Yeah.
values. That's not culture. That's office culture.
Yeah.
Culture is definitely not only an internal thing. Like when you set values and you set culture, it needs to be as relevant to your customer and your audience as it is to your people inside, because it's the culture of the brand they buy into. It's
I love
this
that.
our brand stands for something. So let's use Patagonia as an example. Patagonia's culture is doing good in the like to the environment. That is their culture. The entire purpose revolves around doing good for the environment, making a positive impact. Now, their values are actually built out of that, and those values are as relevant to someone buying the t-shirt or the backpack or the cap as it is to the employee working for the company. So everyone
Mm.
needs to buy into culture. And oftentimes companies keep culture to themselves. They think it's something they need to put into the job description to get someone
Yeah.
amped about working at the company. And that is super wrong. Your culture should actually be front facing. It should be like one of the core pillars of your content that you put out into the world. This is our company culture. At
Yeah.
CXL, our culture is like that we have the gold standard of marketing training. Like everything
Mm.
we do need to be at that. We cannot put out anything mediocre, and no one is mediocre can work with or for the company. We can't get a mediocre like instructor. So the culture goes in all different directions and shape
Sure.
everything that happens, everything that is created, everything that is decided, the strategy, everything needs to come from that culture. And
Mm.
then also, like to your point, when people get a brand consultant, they think you should do magic. I've now gotten to a point where I start with my first session is education. I make
Yeah.
whoever pays me for branding needs to sit down for an hour and a half and go through a lecture on what brand is. What's the
Mm.
theory behind brand? What are the pillars of a brand essence? What is the purpose of a vision and a mission? What is the purpose of culture and like core values? So they
Yeah.
understand what we're going to build. And they also need to understand that it's only a blueprint of the house. You still need to build the house. If people start getting that, they start seeing, this is how it shapes the conversations that I need to have. This is how it shapes the social media. This is how it shapes the imagery that I use on my website to build association with the brand. This is how I create purpose. When you ask people about
Mm.
what's your brand benefits in e-commerce, they'll tell you we've got next day shipping or free shipping. That's not a brand benefit. It's
No.
a hygiene factor. If I shop online, I expect that from everyone. It doesn't set you
Yes.
apart. What sets you apart is if I buy and you say you're donating $1 of every sale to a kids hospital for something. Now I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
now I understand. But does that purpose align with also what you're selling? So that's the thought process that needs to sit behind it that so many people just don't do. And they just leave money on the table, in my opinion.
What are the top three things that every company needs to understand about the significance of branding and marketing? That process that you've just spoken about. Some business leaders might say, this is a waste of my time. Why do I need to know about a brand strategy? Just do the job, right? So if there were three things that you could sell to them and say, this is why this is a necessary process to go through, what would those three things be?
Cool. So first of all, I'd say it's like I've mentioned already, it's the entire organization. Branding is not something that you just hand over to the marketing department. It is brand management happens on the marketing department. So the management of the touch points, making sure that everything's aligned. But to build the brand, that's the entire organization. Depending on regardless of which industry, if you've got a person talking to someone else in the company, they are part of the brand. So that goes in all different directions. Leadership needs to understand that the entire organization is responsible for building brand, both externally and internally to that culture. Number two, I would say it's more than a logo. That's the main thing that people need to understand. That's not a basic way to say it, but the brand is not the visual identity. The
Yeah.
brand is the perception held in the mind of the consumer. So how you shape that perception is the important consideration. And the most important thing out of the three, I would say it's a long-term game. Why care about branding? That is the big thing, the whole kind of fight between CMO, CFO. A powerful brand enjoys greater growth. It's been
Mm.
proven time and time again. The more mental availability your brand enjoys, the more likely someone is to come and buy it. So the cold hard result from building a brand is that your cost of acquisition and your cost of goods sold comes down over time while sales
Mm.
increase. So if you are not spending money on distribution and getting in front of your customer and building mental availability, is not going to happen. Big brands don't become big by sitting around and waiting for people to take notice of them.
I have to squeeze this question in. An opportunity to transform my thinking as a strategist, as a marketer. And there was one key thing that I need to know about the strength of my role in a company or on a team. What would you say that thing is? What do I need to know is one thing I should never compromise as a marketer?
Your job is to shape perceptions.
Simple. Love it.